The first time I decided to lie about who I was, it wasn't because I was ashamed. It was because I was tired. Tired of people smiling too wide when they heard numbers. Tired of being evaluated like a business opportunity instead of a woman. So when I got engaged to Adrian, I made a quiet choice. I would meet his family as someone small, someone simple, someone they would underestimate. Adrian and I met in the most ordinary way possible. A delayed flight, two strangers stuck at an airport cafe, one shared charging outlet. He offered me his spot without hesitation. We started talking to pass the time. There was no performance in him, no forced charm. He told me about his work at his father's company and how he felt pressured to prove himself. I told him I worked freelance and took on small projects. That part was technically true. I just didn't mention that the projects were international contracts worth more than his yearly salary. For over a year, I kept my life compartmentalized. My companies ran smoothly under management. My name rarely appeared publicly. I had learned early that silence was a powerful shield. Adrian fell in love with the woman who cooked on Sundays, who preferred bookstores over parties, who wore simple clothes and laughed easily. He never once asked about my bank balance, and that was exactly why I loved him. But love makes you brave, and bravery demands truth. When he proposed, it wasn't dramatic, no orchestra, no crowd, just him, nervous, holding my hands in our apartment kitchen. I said yes before he finished the sentence. We were happy, calmly happy, the kind of happiness that feels steady instead of loud. Then came the sentence that shifted everything. My parents want to meet you. He didn't say it with excitement. He said it carefully, like someone placing a fragile glass on a table. I asked about them. He described his father as disciplined, self-made, proud of his business empire, his mother elegant and socially conscious, his older sister deeply involved in charity boards and high society circles. They can be particular, he admitted. Particular meant judgmental. I knew the type. Wealthy families who measured people by background, accent, clothes, and connections. I had spent years in boardrooms filled with men like that. They assumed authority based on appearance alone. That night, I made my decision. I would walk into their home not as the woman who owned multiple properties and investments, but as the freelancer from a modest background. I wanted to know if they valued me for my character or if they only respected power. The day of the dinner, I wore a simple beige dress, flat shoes, no luxury watch, no visible designer labels. I tied my hair back and wore minimal makeup. I looked like someone who earned just enough to get by. Their house was enormous, marble floors, high ceilings, art that cost more than cars, the kind of home that announces status before you even step inside. Adrian squeezed my hand as we approached the door. He looked nervous. His mother opened it. Her eyes scanned me in 1 second. Dress, shoes, hair, posture. That quick assessment told me everything. Her smile was polite but tight. "You must be Elena," she said. "Yes, ma'am," I replied softly. We stepped into a living room that felt more like a museum. His father stood near the fireplace, hands behind his back. He shook my hand firmly. His grip lingered half a second too long, as if testing something. "So," he began before we even sat down, "Adrian says you work freelance?" "Yes, sir." "In what field?" "Digital consulting, mostly small businesses." He nodded slowly, the kind of nod that says, "That sounds small." Dinner was beautifully arranged, crystal glasses, silver cutlery, but the conversation wasn't about food. It was about evaluation. His sister leaned forward. "Do you plan to keep working after the wedding?" "Yes," I answered calmly. She smiled thinly. "That's ambitious." Ambitious, the way she said it made it sound inappropriate. His mother asked about my family. I told them my parents were school teachers in a small town. That part was true. They were humble people who valued education more than money. I was proud of that. But in that room, I could see the subtle shift. Teachers didn't impress them. His father cleared his throat. Marriage into our family comes with certain expectations, stability, reputation, understanding how things are done. I understood exactly what he meant. They weren't just judging me as a future wife, they were measuring me as a social investment. Adrian sat quietly, uncomfortable. I could feel his tension. He loved me, but he had grown up under their authority. Then came the question that changed the tone completely. "And what are your long-term financial prospects?" his father asked bluntly. I lowered my eyes slightly. "I'm still building my career." Silence. That silence was louder than any insult. His mother smiled gently. "Adrian has always been surrounded by strong influences. We just want to make sure he continues in that direction." Strong influences, meaning wealthy, connected, powerful. I nodded politely and changed the topic. I asked about their business operations. I asked thoughtful questions about expansion, overseas partnerships, and risk management. I saw his father's eyes sharpen. He hadn't expected those questions from someone small. But I kept my tone modest, curious, not authoritative. By the end of the night, I knew their verdict. I wasn't impressive enough. Over the next few weeks, subtle pressure began. Adrian mentioned his parents suggested a prenuptial agreement. I agreed immediately. He looked surprised. "You're okay with that?" he asked. "Of course, it protects both of us." What he didn't know was that the prenup would barely scratch my financial structure. When we met with their lawyer, I read every line carefully. The lawyer spoke to me slowly, as if I assumed I wouldn't understand complex terms. I almost smiled. I had negotiated contracts worth millions without blinking. I signed without argument. After that, his parents became slightly warmer, but not welcoming. They tolerated me, invited me to events, but never mentioned what I did. One charity gala, I overheard his mother whisper to a friend, "She's sweet, but not exactly our level." I felt something shift inside me that night. Not anger, clarity. Adrian noticed the distance growing between me and his family. "They'll come around," he promised. I nodded, but I knew something he didn't. 6 months before the wedding, an unexpected opportunity appeared. Adrian's father's company began facing financial strain. A major overseas deal collapsed. Investors grew nervous. There were rumors of cash flow issues. I watched quietly. Then, one afternoon, I received a call from a partner overseas. Adrian's father was seeking emergency investors for a large expansion project. He didn't know the firm he was approaching was partially owned by me. I made one call. Within weeks, a formal proposal reached their company, a private investment group offering substantial capital in exchange for equity and strategic oversight. The board was desperate. They agreed to a meeting. When I walked into that boardroom in a tailored black suit, hair down, confident posture, no luxury disguise, the moment Adrian's father saw me, his face went completely pale. I wasn't sitting beside Adrian anymore. I was sitting across from them, representing the investment group. The room went silent. "Miss Alina?" he stammered. I smiled professionally. "Thank you for meeting with us." The presentation began. I spoke clearly, precisely, outlining growth projections and restructuring plans. Every executive in that room listened, including his father. Adrian looked at me like he was seeing me for the first time. When the meeting ended, the board voted unanimously to accept the investment terms. They had no choice. Without the capital, their company would collapse. Afterwards, his father approached me privately. "Why didn't you tell us?" he asked quietly. "Would it have changed how you treated me?" I replied gently. He didn't answer. Adrian was shaken, Not angry, just overwhelmed. "You trusted me enough to marry me," he said that night, "but not enough to show me this?" I admitted I wanted to know if you loved me without it, and you did, but your family, they needed to show me who they were first. He held my hands. "I'm sorry." I believed him. The wedding plans shifted after that. His parents' tone changed completely. Suddenly, I was impressive, remarkable, a perfect match. But I didn't forget the earlier whispers. At the next family dinner, his mother introduced me differently. "This is Elena. She's a very accomplished entrepreneur." I smiled politely, but inside I felt distant. Respect that arrives after power isn't real respect, it's strategy. Over time, the dynamic evolved. I didn't seek revenge. I didn't humiliate them publicly. I simply maintained boundaries. Professional, polite, but never submissive again. Adrian and I built our own life, separate from their control. He slowly stepped out of his father's shadow and started his own division under the new structure. Our relationship grew stronger because it was honest now. One evening, months after the wedding, his mother asked me quietly, "Why did you pretend to be less than you are?" I answered honestly, "Because I needed to know if your kindness depended on my bank account." She looked down. That was the only apology I ever received. In the end, acting poor didn't make me weak. It revealed strength, mine and theirs. It showed me who measured people by numbers and who measured them by heart. Adrian loved me when he thought I had nothing. That's why I married him. His family respected me when they realized I had everything. That's why I never let their approval define me. Money can open doors, but it also exposes what's already inside a person. And sometimes the most powerful move you can make is letting people underestimate you first.